There we go.
There we are, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ian. First on the buzzer. I'm not sure if you saw what was happening on the green screen. We're not sure how YouTube works
Yes.
entirely. But,
Maybe automatically goes live.
Maybe. So I hope you didn't say anything you weren't meant to. Welcome all back to another Blether with. We've been without a Blether for 2 weeks. And we couldn't wait till Thursday, so we put forward the 14 days without Blether is far too late.
What's yourself?
Right. You've caught me without a hat, which is a rare sighting as well. I was that desperate to jump on and see you guys.
Ian said he didn't see anything, so we're all good.
He did good stuff. So Russell's gone al fresco today as well, which is another rarity. We've got newbies going on outside.
We've got the greenery of Aberhurder behind me. Apologies, Posey might wander down the garden and make an embarrassment of me, but hopefully she won't. She hurt her back. She hurt her back yesterday, so I've not been able to take her for a proper walk. So she's yet to do her toilet, as it were. So
if she doesn't make an embarrassment of you, then maybe me or Kenny can.
It may be me, or it may be absolutely. It won't be the first time if it's me.
So what's in your glass, Russell? What are you
I've poured myself Glentochers. This was a bottle, the old Gordon MacPhail one, that my sister's partner bought for me on a visit a couple of years ago, and I've just never opened. So I opened it a few weeks ago. So as you can see, I'm working my way down through it. It's fantastic.
Fantastic, yeah.
Fantastic, lovely citrus and gooseberry notes. Are you on the tomatin?
The Mambaziak from the trilogy that was released.
Yeah.
Must be about 18 months ago now. So that's what I'm having. Lovely trilogy. The Mambaziak and the Sauterne and the Reef Salt was the three.
Yep.
And then followed up with a cognac cask a few months later.
The Mambaziak's went down very well on a tasting. There was a wee dribble in a bottle I did with a couple. On a tasting a couple of weeks ago, it went down very, very well. Yeah,
it's lovely. We've got Ian on YouTube. We've got Tamara saying hello on Facebook, and Tobias. Yeah, we didn't get down to Campbelltown or Isla, but it looked like a blast.
It did look good.
Next year we will make sure we get on.
I know. It's locked away in deep as dark as Aberdeenshire here.
It does. You can see it sounds tropical, the birds in the background. And
I know. It does get quite noisy with the birds here, so if it gets too noisy, I'll tell them to shut up.
And good evening, Matthew, joining us tonight, and Alan on Facebook as well. Good evening to you guys. As ever, any questions, feel free to pop them in. We're just about to welcome our guest. In the meantime, let us know what's in your glass. What are you drinking? It's just a little bit overcast now down where we are, so it's getting quite muggy. I expect it's going to pour with rain shortly. So
it's not forecast. We might get a wee ninja shower. I've got the parasol up here just in case. So,
Matthew rubbing it in again, saying Campbelltown was great. These
Canadian photographs, Matthew.
Easy enough to be working too hard.
I saw the photographs. It looked good, yeah, for sure.
Get a wee festival breaks and everything like that.
I know.
You're not working hard enough, Matthew. You need to be on the grindstone far more often. But let's get Kenny in, our guest tonight, Kenny MacDonald. There we go.
Hi everybody, how are we?
And Kenny is on pure, unadulterated H2O tonight. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how the conversation goes.
Dear, oh dear, it's not a good start, lads. Believe you me. When I'm in Lauren's finest, that is not a good start.
An early start unnecessary.
Can you hear us okay, Kenny?
Sorry, I missed that. Say again, lads.
I say we all have to make sacrifices for the job.
Oh, listen, I'll make up for it. Don't you worry. I will definitely make up for it. Well, in fairness, we had our birthday for our Whisky Club last night. All lost distilleries, and I lost a day thanks to the lost distilleries. So I'm okay with the water just now. I'll stick with that. And I'm driving at 4 o'clock in the morning, so I've got to be a good boy.
Is that not why they're called lost distilleries? Because they make you lose things like your memory.
Aye, pretty much.
We've got Alan McLaughlin on YouTube saying hello to you, Penny.
Breaking up a wee bit. I'm just struggling a wee bit to hear you, lads.
Yeah, the sounds not great coming from you. Alan McLaughlin is saying good evening. He's saying it's good to see you.
It's good. It'd be good. Much better just to sit and have a few drams together, right enough. But
yeah,
nice
well,
to know.
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Talking about those ninja showers, I'm going to have to lean forward a wee bit because that's the rain started here. So.
You can never tell.
This is crackling like buggery on this at the moment. I'm going to try and get this onto my laptop. It's no happy on my laptop, but
I'll tell you what it might be, Kenny. If you StreamYard doesn't like Safari, so if you've got Chrome or something, that's not the one.
It's just Safari, which is mind you, I've got listen, you know what I'll do? I'll take the laptop away, 'cause I think that might be interfering. Yeah, that sounds a wee bit better. Let's just go with that.
Okay. If I have issues, we can always try the laptop again. Me and Russell can.
Well, we can speak rubbish, I'm sure. Absolutely. Talk about the weather in Aberhurder.
So the crackling is terrible, lads.
Yeah,
give me 2 seconds, will you? I'll try and go and get a wee speaker and see if that will kind of clear anything up, because
no worries.
Really struggling to hear you boys. Hang on.
No problem.
This is bringing back fond memories of my very first Dram Mor tasting with the East City Whisky Club. When Kenny kept disappearing.
Kenny was on there, wasn't he? Yeah.
He kept disappearing, and we had to make our own entertainment for quite a period of the night, and it got a wee bit raucous. And that was the famous night. I can't remember, Matthew, if you were on that night or not, but that was certainly the famous night of the Wallabies. The famous statement of in order to see the Wallaby, you've got to think like a Wallaby, from Darren in Glasgow, which led to much hilarity.
Was Kenny still there at that point?
I think he'd maybe gone home by that time. Yeah.
You hearing us better, Kenny?
Crystal clear, lads.
Fantastic. So how's business?
Busy.
Yeah.
Busy. No complaints, very much a first world problem. We've had over the last couple of releases, every time anything comes out, boom, it's gone. And ever since we started playing a wee bit with the rums as well, it's just got even more men, to be honest with you. No complaints this end, none at all, but you just put a hell of a lot of work into a new release, and as soon as a new release comes out, you haven't got it anymore, and you're all the way back again. But I would much rather it was that way than we had a hell of a lot of bottles that were sitting about for dusting. So yeah, good, all good.
We quite often have that issue in the shop when we have new releases that we don't even get the chance to sell because they're gone. It is like, you want to talk about it, you want to pour a dram and share it with people, and just like, that's gone. It's for God's sake. Yeah, it's
certainly not a bad completeness, lads. That's for sure. But it's been a busy wee spell. We've been doing a lot of travelling about, seeing a few of our distributors. We were out today with the boys from South Korea. So yeah, it's little by little, small steps, but we're getting there, and it's good to keep pushing on,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the drinks have been well received as well, which is fantastic news.
Aye, well, it's always one of these things you worry a wee bit about, Russell. Can you think, well, I really like it, but that doesn't go for me very much. It's a wee bit like you try not to develop or finish the drink to your palate all the time, because you know that folk love different things.
Yep.
But it's very difficult because when you're looking at it, it needs a wee bit more of this, it's got too much of that. It's always to your own palate. So, yeah, it's a difficult thing to get that balance right. But, yeah, so far so good, mate.
I suppose as well, you're trying to find something that's good, that's going to appeal to a lot of people, but also have that little bit of difference about it as well. And that must be incredibly difficult to find. It
can be a real pain, actually, to be honest with you, Mike. You need that wee quirk, you need that wee thing that stands out, especially where you've got so many independent bottlers out there. What makes you different from everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just got to be that a wee bit extra time, a wee bit more attention, care, love that you put into what you're doing. Making sure that the casks, the spirit you're using is top quality spirit. And then 9 times out of 10, you'll get spirits and they're going to look like pretty pale,
Yeah.
So we've then got to think, all right, well, the spirit's fantastic, but it needs a wee bit more TLC. What oak is that going to go into? And spending a wee bit of time thinking on the right move to really bring what's best out in that spirit. So far, so good. It's always a learning curve, and you learn every day, which is something that's wonderful about the job. It's never a copy-paste day, ever. And there's no manual for this. There's not a training course for it. You just kind of wish, a wee bit of knowledge and keep your fingers crossed, a bit of blind luck. You should be all right. So, yeah, so far, so good.
But personality comes into it as well, Kenny, and accessibility. And, your personality is larger than life, and the accessibility of being able to spend time with you. I mean, guys get to talk to you all over the world. So that's got to be one good thing for the brand as well. It
certainly helps when you get that person-to-person thing. I'm a people person. I like talking to folk. The last couple of years, for all the likes of Zoom and all this has been a godsend. Without it, where would we have been? It's not the same as standing, chewing the fat with somebody and having a good chat.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, as far as trying to make yourself accessible, I'm just a bloke doing a job. I'm nobody special. So, it would be crazy to ever get to the stage where I was at arm's length. I never ever want to do that. Mm-hmm. Just a boy that loves whiskey and likes to share his passion. So the more folk I can share it with, the happier I am.
And then the photographs on social media certainly live up to that as well.
Aye, sometimes maybe a little bit too much.
Not at all. They always look great. Every time I see one, I think, gosh, I wish I was there.
Well, unlike the folk who are actually standing with me, who are wishing they could be up there, but...
You do quite a lot of festivals, don't you? I think the last 3 posts you've had, you've been representing somebody else. So how do you?
Yeah, well, this is how my whiskey journey really started. It was I've been doing freelance stuff for Ian MacLeod's now for 8 years. 8 or 9 years. Well, I started off doing wee tastings in local bars and things like this. But it's a very, very difficult industry to get into when no one knows you and you're not a kid. It's one of these industries you get in when you're young and you're there till it's time to leave. But I didn't get into the industry until I was 40 years old. And, very much, who's Kenny MacDonald? Why the hell should we talk to this guy? But I was fortunate enough that, Ian MacLeod's gave me the opportunity to do a wee bit of work for them. It's gone incredibly well. Last 2 weeks ago, I was down in Ayr for Speyside Distillers. But ever since Big Paul Dempsey's moved on, they had a wee bit of a gap, in the lab. Well, we've got festivals on, but we've got nobody to do them. And I've always gone very, very well with them. They're nice people there. And they asked a wee favour, said, you don't fancy popping down and doing this for us, do you? I went, aye, why the hell not? It'll be a laugh. Yeah. It's the one thing I've not really had the opportunity to do is do any festivals for Dram Mor, because the minute our bottles come out, they're sold. So we've never got any stock to take to festivals. And the whole concept of that is you're really using that as a way to promote your brand and to further your sales. And we're in the fortunate position where I just don't have anything to do that with. So there will be a time, and as time goes on and as Dram Mor grows, there will be less and less that I'm going to be able to do with other people. But it's one of the things that I love about the Whisky family is that we're all quite keen to give each other a bunk up sometimes, and if I can keep doing it. I was speaking to one of the sales directors today, and it was just saying, a couple of wee things coming up. Can you do them? Hell yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They're good folk to work with. It's good fun. It's a good learning experience for me, and it gets me as a brand sort of thing more well known, you know, as you go out and about, and that in turn helps Dram Mor because people go, oh, that's his whiskey, yeah, let's buy that.
Yeah,
so
I've seen you at a festival or something, and they kind of click to a little bit more respect and kind of recognition and all that kind of thing. You representing these brands and thinking, okay, so also he does his own thing as well.
aye.
All comes into full circle. It's a nice way of doing it as well, and it's good that these guys show their trust in you to go and do that.
It's been amazing, actually, if I'm being honest with you, Mike. You know, the faith that people have shown me in the industry in general has just been outstanding, and I wouldn't be, neither myself or Victoria would be where we are today if it wasn't for the faith and the trust that these guys have placed in me. And I'm forever grateful to them. And if I can help them out in any way, shape or form, I always will.
Have you had any falling outs over cask decisions with Victoria? Because you're both very heavily involved, aren't you?
I'm far too frightened.
Very much to use your tool. Correct answer. Well done.
I think Jack from Uncharted had a very similar answer as well.
Yeah, he did.
Susan, sure as hell. So, at place, we will have lively discussions before I realised that Victoria was right all along.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Yeah. It's one of the joys of working with the other half, isn't it?
We've actually been really lucky. We work well together. You know, we're saying we were out doing some tastings in Israel a wee while back there, and I was explaining to the guys that we've got the absolute perfect blend, where Victoria has got no off button, she's just a machine, and I've got no on button. So the very fact that we're in that situation, we work beautifully together. I'm more the out front jazz hands guy. Victoria's the brains of the operation, and she's the one that keeps me on the straight and narrow as much as is humanly possible.
So what made you decide you wanted to get into the industry? I mean, you're talking about coming in your 40s and also a change of career, I guess, with the sound of things.
Oh, very much so. And in an older life, kind of far past life, I was a senior meat inspector for the British government, for the Food Standards Agency. I was only in it for the glamour and the sexy uniform. You know, working in abattoirs is just an absolute joy.
Yes.
But whiskey was always, I always had an interest. It was always a passion. It was like, that was my stamp collecting. You know, that was my geeky bit in me. And, you know, going back, my grandfather was head foreman in Ballantyne's for many a year before going back up north. So there was a wee bit of it in the blood going back skipping a generation. But even as a kid, it was always, you know, when we first started going out drinking, guys would move on to things like Canadian Club and Southern Comfort and all this kind of thing. I went, no, I'll have a whiskey. I'm like, only old men drink whiskey. I'm like, no, I'll try this. And you tried one and go, well, what's different for that one to that one? Yeah. And you very early start to build up that picture of, you know, exactly what the industry is. And it was always a fascination. And I was fortunate, we got the opportunity, it's about 10 years ago, 11, no, it's further back, 13 years ago, to take voluntary redundancy, which I decided, right, it was Victoria had said to me, why do you do this job? You hate it. Well, of course I hate it. It's my job. I had no concept you could do something you enjoyed. That was alien to me. And she went, you know, you're living so you can work. You're not working so you can live. So stop doing this. And I thought, well, what do I do? She went, I don't know. You'll think of something. And I thought, well, if it's something I like, maybe I could do something with whiskey. She went, on you go then. Do something with whiskey. Yeah. And crazily, I just put my hand over my eyes and stepped off the abyss. Mm-hmm. Just thought, right, that's it. I'm leaving. Best thing I ever did. Scariest thing I ever did. Yeah. But the best thing I ever did. And although there's been a hell of a lot of hard work and a lot of tough times to get to where we are, and there's going to be a hell of a lot of hard work to come. Best thing I ever did, guys. By a country mile, the best thing I ever did.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And kudos to you. Well done for taking the plunge.
It is such a welcoming industry, and I think that's, coming from a different background myself, you don't realise how enjoyable work can be when you're working with someone else.
Exactly. I just wish to God I'd done it 20 years previous.
Mm.
And you think to yourself, how could this have been here all the time? And I was completely unaware of how good it is working in this industry. And it takes a long time to get in, but see, once you do get in and you do win the trust of some of your, competitors or some of your fellow, whiskey enthusiasts, everybody's on your side because you're trying your hardest. And so long as you're dealing with whiskey and talking from your heart and not from your pocket, then they'll talk to you all day long, they'll love you. And some of the help I've had from folk like, the late great Colin Ross, guys like Jim McEwen, they've really rallied to me and really helped me on my way. And it's so enlightening to see how good an industry it is.
Yeah. We have Ian McAllister, who has come on to say that you and Victoria are both wonderful people having passion for the industry.
I tell you what, Ian's one to talk about wonderful people. He takes it as far as wonderful people goes. So hats off to Ian. Lovely, you're on
the absolute best for sure.
He's an absolute gem, man. I'll be getting down as soon as I can, Ian. We've still to share that Dram, and it's been a wee while. So as soon as I get the opportunity, I'll give you a shout and I'll pop down and we'll get a couple of Drams.
Well, make sure you let us know. We'll maybe come down with you because
absolutely
we're trying to get for a Dram with Ian McAllister as well.
It's a lift.
Hey, lads, that's for sure.
Just before, I've got Ian Bruce on YouTube who's wanting to ask a question, but just before we do that, while we're on the Kenny and Victoria point, so you stepped into the business, you put it yourself and got into whiskey. At what point did you reach out to Victoria and say, was it a case of I need your help with this, or was it a case of do you want to get involved? How did that?
It was kind of organic, if I'm being completely honest, Mike. We started off, it all came from a visit to Glengoyne Distillery with Victoria's brother and his now wife. And we were sitting in the distillery and you get your wee drama 10-year-old before you could go on a tour. And my sister-in-law's kind of looking around and I'm going, what are you looking for? I need Coke or something. I can't just drink it like this. And drink like this, honestly. And she was very nervous. I'm like, I don't want to do this. And she took a wee sip and she looked at me and went, that's not whiskey. And I'm like, no, the stuff that you've been drinking in Lithuania is no whiskey. And we had a great time. On the way out, Victoria inadvertently asked, do they sell Glengoyne in Lithuania? To which nobody could answer. So about 15 phone calls later, we're sitting in Dram Mor in the West End of Glasgow having a pint. My phone goes. Stuart Thompson, one of the sales directors, who is now a lifelong friend. He said, hey, what's this you're asking about Lithuania? I said, we're just wondering if you're sold there. And that's my wife's from there and blah, blah, blah. And if you're not, we're quite happy to help you get in. We're lucky. Victoria was very well connected at home. And he said, well, what have you got in mind? I said, well, just give us your price list. We'll bang 10% on it. We'll go and find the right route to market. We'll find the right distributor. We'll do staff training, blah, blah, blah. We'll monitor sales. We'll do any firefighting because at least one of us can speak the language. And he went, hold on, wait a minute. Are you saying this isn't going to cost me anything? I went, aye. Well, come in and talk to me. That's when the real kind of just kicking around with tastings and bars and stuff like that started taking the back seat because we were now actually working properly for, albeit parallel to the industry, we were starting to make headway. There on in, we never really looked back. We ended up working with distilleries such as Arran, with Speyside Distillers, with Weems Malts, with Ben Nevis for a wee while. We've done too bad. So through that, you do build up really good rapport with people. You get that relationship with them. And that was Victoria was there from day one. So, she's very much, if somebody had asked me a wee while ago, what would Dram Mor be if Victoria wasn't there? I said, well, put it this way. If there was no Kenny MacDonald, there would still be a Dram Mor tomorrow. If there was no Victoria MacDonald, game over. Because she is real driving force of this. She's the brains. Make no mistake. But she very much prefers life behind the scenes rather than in front of it. Every now and again, I'd drag her out, screaming and kicking, and say hello to everybody. She's like, you know.
But that sounds like the ideal partnership. You need somebody to be the, if you like, the brains of the operation. I mean, I'm not saying, but and you also need the personality part, the salesman. You know?
Aye. Yeah, very much. You know, it's it would be rubbish if the two of us were happy sitting in front of a computer.
Yeah.
Because you need somebody to stand up and make a fool of themselves from time to time, and I'm a perfect candidate for standing up and making a fool of himself. And yet, if Victoria was very similar to me, then we would never get any work done.
Yeah.
So it genuinely is. You know, we laugh and joke about the off button, on button thing, but we do have a really, really good blend of strengths and weaknesses that we both bring to the table, and thankfully our strengths cancel each other's weaknesses out. So yeah, I'm incredibly lucky to have somebody like Victoria working.
From a family point of view, you've got your son kind of involved as well now, is that right?
He worked for us for about a year and a half. Unfortunately, it was all the way through lockdown, and it meant that we were sat at this table with a laptop each working away, and really very close. But I'm close to both my sons, and you know, I got to the stage where, Dad, this is driving me up the bloody wall, because he was stuck with me all day, and we weren't seeing anybody, weren't talking to anybody. He went, this is busting my head. I'm going to have to find something else, Dad. This is no good for me. And in fairness, he was seeing nobody, doing nothing. I think had it been now, where international travel's back on, fairs are back on, festival time, it would have been a very different thing.
Yeah.
But he decided to bow out gracefully. He got a job for a wee while in the whisky shop in Glasgow city centre, but now he's working for Glasgow Scotch Whisky Auctions in Glasgow, and loving life. Every now and then, up with some gem that he's got, going, look at this, Dad, it's £100,000. I'm like, put it down.
Put it down.
Well, one of the things about starting at our age, really, I really hope that I don't get to see the best of Dram Mor. I've just got to be the one that gets it up and started and rolling. I've talked to him and he said, yeah, I would like to come back one day, but I've got to do stuff on my own right. He just left university. He wants to spread his things, which quite rightly too, you know. But hopefully we draw him back in. Once he's learned all the tricks of some of the bigger boys, then we can draw him back.
It takes a lot of bravery to do that, to decide. You know, I've got a number here that I can kind of slot into, but for him to make the decision, I want to make my own name in the whiskey industry, and I suppose being under the blanket of Dram Mor was just maybe too safe. Well,
really good way to look at it, Mike. I think you're right. Also, maybe slightly suffocating as far as that one as well, because you are just stuck together day after day after day, typing away in a computer, and that's not what the, you know. But
that's whiskey.
Aye, you know, he will make his own way. He will make his name, and people will respect him for who he is, rather than, oh, aye, your dad gave you a job, did he?
Yeah.
I think that always creates head is, you know, I've just been handed this on a plate. It's no right.
Yeah.
In fairness, we did need someone else at the time, and he was perfectly qualified for the job. So had I not known him, he'd still get the job because he was the right candidate, you know. But he's done the right thing, and you know, now that we're miles apart, we are getting on like a house on fire again. Whereas some dad and their boss is quite difficult.
And you're right. You've got to make your own. You've got to make your own kind of plough your own furrow, as it were. It can be a bit. You can kind of feel you've not really achieved anything if you're so and so's son or so and so's, you know, a niece or uncle, or you know, you've got to find your own way. Absolutely, he's done that.
That's it. You know, and people just constantly look at it as, oh, aye, nepotism.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good you are at the job, you never really get the credit that you deserve.
Yeah,
because it was given to you on a plate. You know, so I'm happy that he's moved on. I'm happy that he's happy. But yeah, I would definitely like to drag him back in at some stage in life when I'm getting old and doty and just too much of a loose cannon to be let out there. Which sadly might not be that far away.
That's when the fun starts, though.
I've got a few years in me yet. Oh yeah, I'm a liability. That's the only problem. But yeah, it would be good to bring him back in one day. My youngest son, he's studying physiotherapy. I've tried to get him interested in whiskey, and he just looks at me and shakes his head. So that's no for me. No for me. I'm all right, big man. He's far too big for me to argue with, so I'll just let him go his way.
I would change loose cannon to catalyst. Every good interaction needs a good catalyst, Kenny. So
that's very polite of you, Russell. That's very kind of you. I think definitely most other folk who know me would stick with the loose cannon bit, but
catalyst. We'll call you the catalyst.
I've been called a lot worse, mate. Believe me.
We're just going to jump back a couple because we've got a couple of questions that came in before we kind of went down that route. Ian Bruce on YouTube is asking about what's the process when selecting cask types for finishing the whiskey in.
I'm actually just about to do it tonight. I've got a whole load of cask samples sitting here, which I've got to work my way through. And there's no real trick to it, I don't suppose. It's just having a broad spectrum of knowledge of flavours. And you look at certain spirits, and some, basically it writes itself. The minute you try it, you go, I know exactly what's needed for that. If you've got something really weighty, say for like Ben Nevis, for example, you're not really just wanting to put it in something that's quite mild and meek. You're wanting something punchy and quite strong, because it's going to have to be that to stand up to the spirit. Yeah. If you're dealing with something much more delicate like a Craigellachie, you're not wanting to kill it with a first fill PX, because it's not Craigellachie anymore. It's just going to vanish. And one thing that I've learned, and Jim McEwen takes a massive amount of credit for guiding my hand in this, is the time level when it comes to finishing. Way shorter than I ever anticipated it to be. If I'm using like first fill wine barriques, 3 months, no more, out. It's basically dipping in and dipping back out again. I think, irrespective of what cask you pick up on, and everybody I think in the industry will have their own favourites. I adore Paolo Cortado, and we use Paolo Cortado at every given chance. Yeah. They're not cheap, right enough, but what a finish it gives you. And sometimes you've got to kind of restrain yourself a wee bit, because you don't want to be that one-trick pony. Mm-hmm. So every single, spirit that we've got in Scotland, you can sit down and say, well, there's at least 4 or 5 different flavour profiles that will work really well with that spirit. And as an independent bottler, it's my job to make sure that I showcase that spirit to the very best of its abilities. Because, I didn't make that stuff. These distilleries have allowed me to use their name. So there's a huge amount of, responsibility on me to make sure that I showcase what they've done to the best I can. And yeah, don't get me wrong. Do we always get it right? No, we don't. But if I'm not happy with the end result, well, just sell it on to somebody else. I am not going to bottle something under the Dram Mor label that is not 100% right. Because all it takes is one bad outturn. You're only as good as your last bottle. So we've set the bar really high for ourselves. We've used really, really good quality oak in the past. I don't think it's just the type of cask, but it's the quality of the cask as well. I love to use, if I'm using bourbon, for example, I will always go to Buffalo Trace, which is going to give a brilliant finish. Whereas others, you'll get a classic bourbon finish, but it's just not as rounded. It's not as balanced as I would like. So a good knowledge of the drinks industry in general, out with just whiskey, knowing wines, knowing cognacs, knowing Calvadoses, knowing brandies, knowing wines, knowing Madeiras, all these kind of things. The more knowledge you can get, the better equipped you are when it comes to sitting down and going, right, what's going to work with that?
Yeah.
But as I say, we always get it right. Good question, Louis.
It sounds like good fun finding out, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, every now and again, I'll sit down here and Victoria will bring through the samples that have just come in, and there's 28 samples, and you think, what am I doing tomorrow? Oh, I nothing. And you just start working your way through them, and it's all very good to do this and have a wee spittoon, but you've got to work on what the finish is and all these kind of things as well, and you can't do that when you're spitting the damn stuff out.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I find it incredibly difficult. If I put whiskey in my mouth, it's sure as hell isn't coming back out again. I spent a lot of time making that. It's damn rude just to spit it out.
Yeah.
But yes, it's good fun.
In a Dram Mor bottle anyway.
No, it's a wee bit like my first chemistry set. You're saying, well, let's play with that. Well, what will that one do? It's good fun.
That's a good question. Just a follow-on, and apologies, Alan. I know you got your question in first, but Matthew's just come in with a follow-up to that, just saying that do you always try to finish with the cask that you've got, or have you come across any kind of refills that you found actually, you know what, that's fine the way it is. We don't need to do anything with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In an ideal world, if you can find something that is just perfect, then happy days.
Yeah.
We've had a few. There was a very young Tullibardine that we released. It was only 5 years old, but it had sat in a first fill Oloroth Hoggy all its days, and it was banging. It was absolutely out of this world. And then at the opposite end, there was a 24-year-old Invergordon that we released a wee while ago there. Refill Hoggy, but just the fact that it had sat in there for so long, it had softened that grain so well. It wasn't overly bourboned because the cask itself was a refill, but the balance on it was perfect. So in an ideal world, I would love to be able to buy whiskey that I could just, go to bottle. That's good to go. So if anyone knows where I can buy stuff like that, please contact me because it's murder polish.
I suppose if it was that good, then you wouldn't get your hands in the cask. It would have been.
Well, that's it as well. It's the vast majority of stuff that independent bottlers are able to buy tends to be whiskies that have been made as packers for blending. It was never intended that these casks would go to single malt. But the spirit is incredibly good quality. And if you've got a good quality spirit, you can do anything with it.
Yeah.
You can make an absolute arse of it as well, right enough. But, providing you've got a rough idea of your oak, then you can always really bring something to the table and bring that to life. At the moment, one of the things we're doing a lot of is buying new make spirit and getting it laid down. So working with Blether, incredible folk down there, Holyrood Distillery, and we've just had a big batch made for us, Speyside Distillers, and pretty soon, next year we're going to be able to start getting some Inchdarney, which this is a stunning new make spirit, absolute beauty. And I've got a meeting next week at Falkirk to go out and have a wee chat with them as well. So just to start getting stock laid down for the future, because it's going to become harder and harder to access casks.
Yeah. I mean, that was exactly the question I was just about to ask you, because I'm sitting with the Gordon at Field just now, and obviously, new make spirits, what they do. I mean, you guys have obviously been able to do that. I mean, was that an easy thing to be able to do, or did it take a bit of hard negotiating? Or
it takes a wee bit of work, Russell, if I'm honest with you. In the current market, no one's got enough whiskey. Nobody. Yeah. So it's like trying to prize a child away from a mother sometimes. They want to keep every drop that they've made. So I think with some of the younger, smaller distilleries, then it's a good avenue for them for increasing revenue flow. But they've also got to be very guarded and very careful about where that spirit ends up.
Yeah.
At the moment, we've been lucky enough that Diageo have given us a direct supply agreement as well. But the paperwork you've got to go through to say we will never sell this on the open market. is huge. You know, it must go to bottle. That is for you to bottle and nothing else.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got to be very careful that the expectations of the distillery when they sell that to us are things that we can live up to.
What a privilege to get that. I mean, I know you've got to go through the paperwork and you've got to be honest and trustworthy, but I mean, still, what an honour and a privilege to actually be given spirit from some of these.
It's a game changer, and you know, don't get me wrong, we don't have free reign to all the distilleries. I wish we did. If I asked for a Talisker or a Lagavulin, they'll just laugh me out of the building.
You're still talking to them, and
it was incredibly good of them to entrust us with their stock. And, you know, again, it's incumbent on us to make sure that when we do put it in a bottle, people go, God, that was so good, I'm going to go out and buy more of that. But yeah, I think when you start talking to people of that calibre, and they do take you seriously and they do take you on, then it's always a really good bargaining chip to take to the table when you are talking to people. Say, well, you know, if we're good enough for these guys, we should be good enough for anybody.
Sure.
It's a great achievement as well from where you started off to get to that point where you've got, one, the cash flow, and two, the time to put new make spirit down and allow it to mature. That must be, from a business point of view, that must have been a great leap of faith in it, and a great kind of step forward to say, we're actually going to take a gamble on this spirit and give it time, rather than, like you say, a 3-month finish and get it bottled and get it out.
It's very much, you're in it for the long game, you know, and you know you're in it for the long game when you start doing that, Mike. But we had no illusions when we started this that we were going to come in and make a quick buck and then bail out again. And we knew it wasn't going to be cheap. We knew it was going to take a lot of hard work. We knew it was going to take a lot of time. But if we're going to do it right, that's really the only way that we're going to be able to do it. And you've got to build a really strong, solid foundation before you can move on to your next step. And, you know, so far, so good. They're at the end of the day, it's all assets for the company. So if for any reason we decided that there was going to be a massive change and this wasn't for us, then it's easy enough for us to sell either back to the distillery or to another bottler. So it's all assets. But that's certainly not the intention. The intention is that every single drop that we've got, we want to either bottle or we'll make it available to perhaps one of our distributors who also bottle for themselves as well. So long as I know it's going in a bottle and it's not just battering about on the open market where some charlatan can charge a bloody fortune to some unsuspecting dope who's been told, well, whiskey is the best investment in the world, but the way it's been handled by some people out there is horrific. You know, investment is now absolutely, you know, poison in this game.
It's the best investment. It's also the best drop to drink as well, and that's.
It's for us. For us to enjoy, and I get it with the bottle collectors. I've got a relatively modest collection myself that I really hope one day know to sell. I want to get to the stage where, I'm putting my feet up and I'm opening some of these, and I'm going to enjoy myself. That's me saving up for my old age. So 2 years' time, I'll be getting told right into all that. But yeah, when it comes to just viewing whiskey as a commodity, that's not what it's for. It's for us to enjoy. It's a toy. It's for us to play with. Play with it.
I'm going to ask another sneaky, and that kind of line, just a sneaky, and I apologise to Alan again, but we'll get back to your question, Alan. But given that you've got all this kind of wonderful stuff lying there, and you're also getting some new makes with it, how much time do you spend just thinking about what you want to do with it? And I mean, do you sleep? Do you go to bed kind of at night dreaming?
Every minute of every day. It's one of these things where, see, unless you are 100% dedicated to this, don't do it. You know, it's there's never a minute goes by where a conversation doesn't end up back on whiskey or oak or what warehouse or whatever, you know. the one thing you got to be careful about is never second guess yourself. Once you've made a decision, you stick with that decision. Right, that's the right thing for that. Get it done. Because if you start second guessing yourself, you never get anything done. So it's all consuming. We're going up. My family's Croft and Lewis. That's where my family are from, Skye and Lewis originally. So we're going to go up to the Croft tomorrow for a few days, which is heaven because there is no internet. There is next to no phone signal. Don't get me wrong. Does that mean I've got a few days off? Hell no. There'll still be work to do.
Well, there's always something going on here, I'm sure. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Always.
Packed with you to try on the way or something.
Well, funnily enough, my cousin who now owns the Croft, they turned the old weaving shed into a wee bar.
Oh, nice.
I'm such the locals start dropping in for a few drams, so I've got bottles to take up the road with me.
Fantastic. We better ask a question, Alan. So I mean, I guess he's just asking if you've got any sneak peeks into what we should expect with the next release. He's just wondering how many bottles he's going to have to split. I assume that's you're going to have to share a few with some other people, Alan, are you?
Right, hold on. I've just got to find out what secrets I'm allowed to divulge or not. So I'm calling the boss. Boss, come here. You're in the middle of what? She's in the middle of a bank transaction.
That's important. Okay, better leave it alone.
Well, put it this way: he's only got
too many zeros at the end.
Too many zeros at the beginning. It's the problem when the decimal point comes and you've still not finished with the zeros. There will be. Well, we've got both a release of single malts coming out and a release of rums coming out. The whiskies will be coming out. Should be the beginning of July. Everything. Some of them are bottled already. Others are in the process. So we're not far away, Alan. I'm not gonna spoil the fun. I'm gonna keep my powder dry on that one now.
I think it's going to be exceptional anyway. I mean, well, as you say, it's a case of trying to get a hold of a bottle now rather than sort of choosing which one you want. You've got to kind of.
It's one of the things that we've become very conscious of, Russell, is the fact that we really need to up our outturns. But it's difficult just trying to get the right casks, trying to get the right spirit, keeping everything at the standard and the level that we've done. The bigger you get, the harder it is to keep that level of quality.
You don't want to do quality for quantity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quality wins all day long.
Yeah.
All day long. That's a given. The one thing I can tell you is later in the year there will be a blended malt coming out as well.
Oh, fantastic.
And we are just about ready to press the button on that one, which I'm really looking forward to because it's going to be something. Oh, there's Gary banging on about bottles. Jeez, we will get that sorted, Gary. We will get that sorted, mate. That is a promise. But we'll do it over a couple of drams. When I get back to Lewis, we'll sit down and we'll have a good chat, mate. That's a given.
Well, tell us when that's happening. We'll come down to Glasgow for that conversation as well.
Oh, lads, you're as well just moving. Just get down the road because it sounds like it's going to be a busy summer for us. But yeah, I think one of the things I'm really keen with the blended malt, again, we've got to keep it to a really high standard, but it gives us the opportunity of having a constant, which we've never had before, where we can repeat, and you know that it's always going to be that quality, you're going to get in a bottle. Whereas at the moment, with the single cask side of things, much as it's wonderful, 300 bottles, once it's gone, it's gone. And even if you wanted to try and replicate that, you can't.
You can't.
You can never do it. You could use the same spirit and the same type of cask, night and day.
Yeah.
There is that's where the alchemy of maturation really comes into play, as every cask is its own signature, its own personality, and you can never copy that. Whereas with the blended malt, we know that if we've got a really good product in that bottle, it's going to be something that people can enjoy, that they can play with, that can make cocktails with, that they can highball, they can drink on its own, they can do whatever they like with it.
That's one of the
That's
things
going to be
coming out a lot more now. There's a lot of really good quality blends out there. I mean, we talk a lot about the Adelphi blend as being, one of the most
phenomenal,
absolutely fantastic. And your Lady of the Glen guys, Gregor and Paul, they've got their.
That's another one which is a cracking blend.
Yeah. So there's lots of fantastic blends out there. Just and a bit more.
Somebody at the shop today actually, and she was buying for her dad Father's Day this weekend, and he's a big fan of the Abuna, our Abuna. She didn't want to spend £10 in a bottle of Abuna. She was like, well, that's cool. We can look for something heavily sherry. Budget-wise, between £30 and £40. So I was like, oh, how about the Berry Brothers Sherry Blend? Well, he doesn't like blends. I said, well, it's a blended malt. It's guarantee you
like it.
It was a bit hesitant. You're going to see, as soon as you mentioned that blend, there was that standoff.
Yeah, there still is.
What, what's the worst he's going to do?
I think it's a wee bit like the single grain side of things as well. When it comes to blends, there's still a wee bit of education that we need as an industry to work on folk, to make them realise that a blended Scotch, whether it's a straight blend, whether it's a blended grain, whether it's a blended malt, it doesn't make it a lesser product. It makes it a different product. And people just automatically, it's just a blend. They've already downcried it. They've downgraded it. It's not as good as... Well, it can be. It's just different. I've had some stunning blended whiskies, and I've had some pretty rubbish single malts. So, it's really important for them to realise that single malt tag does not always give it the big green tick thumbs up sign of quality. And just because it says blended on it does not mean it's a lesser product.
And I think for the last kind of 30, maybe 40 years has been so enthralled in single malts as the premium that they've almost moved from that kind of bread and butter blends, and we're now at the stage where like, crap, we can't keep up with the single malt production. It's like we need to tell people that blends are good again.
We maybe need to do a blend tasting, Mike.
Yeah.
That would be actually really something that I've not done myself, but we have talked about it. And if you look at some of the blends, you mentioned earlier on that what Adelphi are putting out is just stunning. For me, they've really been, they're the benchmark. You want to be at their level. And if you're at their level, you're doing everything spot on. That's as good as it's getting. I've been a massive admirer of what they've achieved. And the same with an American. With the distillery, what's coming out of there is just dynamite as well. But yeah, I think if a wee bit more education, a wee bit more awareness that, this is where, if it wasn't for blended Scotch whisky, there would be no whisky industry.
There would be no industry.
No, it wouldn't exist. And people forget that single malts only ever existed as an ingredient. It's only really since genuinely the 1980s, where we really started pushing single malt as something that should be drank.
People sometimes forget it's actually single malt, or any age statement is a VAT. It's a blend. It's ultimately a blend. The only thing is not a blend is a single cask.
Correct.
And that's
correct.
That's what people
sometimes they go for that in a cask. So But single malt came from the kind of whiskey lock, didn't it? There was so much whiskey left from the crash in the mid '80s that
they had to do something with it.
We need to do something with it. Let's make it a premium product and appeal to a new market kind of thing rather than a blind drinker. It kind of evolved from that. So.
Absolutely. I mean, it's it's one of these funny things that certainly for our generation, it's been a game changer because we have been able to dabble and sample and drink and enjoy the most wonderful spectrum of flavours from the whiskey industry. My dad's generation, God love him when he was still here. I would, every festival I'd go to, I'd bring him back a right good dram that I'd pick up at a festival. And I'd go around and go, wait, let's see what I've got you, Dad. And I'd pour, a decent dram for the two is, I'll enjoy that. That's smashing. And when the old sod passed away and we're clearing the house out, Victoria found in the cupboard in the kitchen, she went, come here and see this. Every dram I'd ever bought him, with that much off of the top of it, the dram that we'd shared,
Really?
grouse. Nothing but grouse. That's all he cared about was his grouse.
Yeah. My dad would do the same.
And, you would never tell somebody like my dad that, blended whiskey is just nowhere near as good as single malt whiskey.
Yeah.
Because for him, it was way better.
Yeah.
And I definitely think we need to change attitudes that this is just a different category. It doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just a different category.
And I think as well, there's and probably more so just now, that economic. The more we downplay blends, or the industry downplays blends, the lesser people who drink blends are going to feel. It's like, well, am I not drinking the right stuff? Am I too poor to afford good whiskey? It's like,
yeah,
absolutely not. We can't emphasize enough that what you say is it's not poor quality because it's maybe a little bit more affordable, it's a little bit cheaper. That doesn't mean you're drinking the wrong stuff. It doesn't mean you can't afford good whiskey.
Absolutely not.
Not in the slightest.
Most people, I think, go through that journey of becoming a bit of a snob, and I would say I was one as well. Along the way, you get into the good stuff and you think this is the best stuff, and then you suddenly realize actually this other stuff's actually really good as well. And I don't need to be drinking all this stuff all the time. And it's an education more than anything else. Yeah, I
think that's something every single one of us who have got a love and a fascination for whiskey go through. Where we kind of delude ourselves a wee bit that, I'm an incredibly classy individual because I'm drinking this all the time.
Yeah.
Drinking as classy as I am. And sometimes you realise that what you're drinking, you're not actually enjoying as much as if you had maybe a good age Chivas or something like that.
It's because every sip, you know how much it costs.
and it's more about the pleasure, the sharing, and the journey. A bottle of Glen Grant from the co-op for 20 odd quid, sharing it with your mates is the best dram in the world.
Anything that you can sit and share and discuss, and that's where whiskey for me has got the edge over any other drink in the world. Whereas in general, alcohol has a tendency of pushing people apart. Whiskey, when you play with it properly, brings everyone together, and that is the beauty of it, is sitting and, as you say, pulling out the cork and throwing it away because you're never going to use it again, and having a right good natter with mates and enjoying a dram rather than sitting going, oh, well, wait a minute, if I pour that large, that's about 90 quid that I've just poured in that glass. I'm frightened to drink it now. Geese piece,
I think as a shop, as a business, we fell into a wee bit of that trap as well, where we didn't have anything to offer that person who came in with a £30 budget. And we haven't quite often somebody comes in and they say, I'm looking for a really, really good whiskey for my friend who helped me out, looked after my dog, or he fixed my plumbing or something, and they just want to say thank you with a really good whiskey. They were like, right, what's your budget? And they'll say 30 quid. And maybe 3 years ago, we were like, you'd be struggling to get something. But now that we were kind of expanding our own knowledge, looking at these Adelphi blends and the Berry Brothers and things like that, we can say, well, here we go, here's some really good malts. Things like Anik is a cracker, a 12-year-old.
It's a great dram, yeah.
Phenomenal.
You don't get better. It's a single malt, but just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's crap. The Glen Murray range, and now we can we have that ability to say, well, here we go, here's some really good whiskey in your budget, and now appeal to everyone. So it's we had to do that. We did. I'll admit that somebody comes in and says, I want a really good single malt, 30 quid. Well, okay.
So I would like that as well, sir. Sorry about that. Wouldn't we all? But it's way too. It's a wee bit like what we used to do with ages. Everybody was always stuck on that number. Everything was age conscious. Now we've got away from that because we've had to. And we now know that there are so many incredibly good no-age statement whiskies. And I've had some 30, 40-year-old whiskies that are rubbish. It's just like sucking an oak. So we've got away from that, but now what we've done is we just automatically associate price tag with quality.
Yeah.
And that one or two distilleries that will remain nameless that sell for absolute bleeding fortune to the name on the bottle. I don't necessarily think what's in that bottle is anywhere near worth what they're selling it for.
Yeah. That guy Alan Mack has a lot to answer for, doesn't
he? Genius of marketing sitting in there somewhere. But yeah, I've too many times people always associate, well, that must be good because it costs bum. And you go, how is it? It's all right. It's nothing. Actually, if you look at some of the Glen Scotias, some of that Scotia Doublewood is out of this world.
Yeah.
And it's expensive.
We need to keep quiet with Glen Scotia in case people start buying it, and then we can't buy it anymore. So that's
They've got enough hype for the last couple of years.
Springbank's a great drug. Let's everybody can buy Springbank. Let's leave Glen Scotia alone.
Well, everybody's not your back. You're moving. I think.
There we go. Yeah,
you're moving. That's one of those ones. Yeah, once or twice on Zoom just for a laugh. He's frozen, then Victoria will walk behind me. You're like, oh.
You ruined it.
Normally when it's an awkward question, oh, but just anything to get away with not answering the bloody question.
Yeah.
So, you do a lot of festivals, and we're talking about questions. And this is always with the chat with Stuart Buchanan last year. Of course, must have been about.
Oh, God help you!
And Stuart's lovely. He's so lovely. But I was saying to him how it must be for his parents, having him and Gordy as he calls him, completely famous and completely different avenues of life. It must have been really weird. And he said to me, you know what? Sometimes I would rather I was Gordy facing down a lion in the African savannah than a German at a festival asking a question.
With the notebook.
Have you experienced that then?
Oh, yeah. We've actually spoken about it as getting there and listing off the stupidest questions that we've been asked. My favourite one, I was asked what esters are formed in a still in the middle of a cold winter compared to the esters that are formed in a still in the middle of a hot summer. And I thought, well,
Esther Ranson.
So I'll give you two answers to that. And the first answer is, why the hell would you want to know that? What way that you could draw the fun out of whiskey any more than that? And again, quite chuffed with himself going, he can't answer that. Ha ha ha. That's what they want to do. Set out to trip you up and prove that they're better than you, because they're all pseudo experts. So the obvious answer is, I said, I can give you the real answer, but it's just going to make you look really good, mate. I said, because it's the same esters that are formed every other day of the year, because the temperature in the still is the same. So why don't you sit down and shut up? And he's elated. There was a German whiskey club, and his pals were like, yes! That always this. And he's ripping other people's knitting with his stupid questions. And it was just one of these ones that I'd had enough of the daft questions, and I thought, no, I'm putting you through the ringer, son. And when I was finished, it was like, right, moving on, right, anybody else? No questions. But you get horrific questions, and people have a tendency to forget you're not public property as well. I was just before Fesh started, and I popped in to see Jim McEwen and Barbara, and I phoned them and said, look, do you want to go out for dinner? And they went, no. And I thought, hey, what have I done? Have I offended them? They went, no, packing. I went, you're packing? They went, yeah, we're getting hell off of this island. Fesh is starting. And I thought, I mean, sense. So when we were in, a wee story, he said, Last time Fresh ran, 2019. There's a knock on the door, opened the door. There's a wee Chinese lad that he'd worked with years and years ago. How are you doing? Come away in. He went, oh, I've got some friends. Just bring them in.
A busload.
Fuck them. His bed. This is the bed Jim McEwen sleeps in. Because they're taking pictures of her grandchildren. It's pictures. These are Jim McEwen's grandchildren. This is Jim McEwen's slippers. And you're like, get it out of my life, will you? I'm not public. I'm not a tourist exhibit. Go away. And that's where it becomes a wee bit.
Yeah.
It can be suffocating. Stuart will get it much more than me. One of the ones that really annoys me, people forget that's attached and they can't just play. Industry, that's all right.
You've got it in some way, though. You must think that it's a little bit of a compliment that people, as obtrusive and annoying and frustrating it is, when you sit at home at the end of the day, you think they really like me.
That's very true. And 99.9% of the folk out there are incredibly respectful. They give you your space. You know, it's a joy talking to them. And, you know, you always try to be as open and as receptive as you can be. You know, keep in touch and, you know, follow me on Facebook or whatever, and I'll chat away to you. And, yeah, that's grand. It's just every now and again, one of them has had too much to drink and forget you're not their best mate. Mm-hmm. And you're really... And it's always when you're at your most knackered. It's been a 4-day festival. And it's the last hour of the 4th day that this clown pops up to decide your best buddy, and you're like, thanks, mate. But yeah, 99.9% of the folk out there, it is an absolute privilege that they, you know, that all the times in masterclasses, cannot for actually wanting to waste your day listening to nonsense. You know, it really is. It's quite humbling, actually. It puts you in your place. It makes you realise how fortunate you are. Mm-hmm. Certain. But yeah, the German with a notebook, down the road.
Absolutely no disrespect to Germans whatsoever, but yeah.
Listen, I've
heard the Dutch and the Norwegian.
I'm just back. We were over in Nuremberg at the weekend there. Then I had a festival to do in Hamburg, but that was us opening the European branch of Dram Mor. So we are now Dram Mor Europe as well, which, thanks to the beauty and great fiscal idea that is Brexit, it is an absolute must that we do this, because without it, it's an absolute nightmare. So we are now officially a German company as well. So although I'm slagging the one German guy with a notebook, I've got a hell of a lot more friends in Germany. So that's...
We're being very stereotypical and what have you.
But
very much so.
Find it this we'll call him a European or her a European with a notebook.
Yes.
When they visit the distillery and they ask the poor tour guide, and she doesn't know, or he doesn't know the answer. Well, Stuart Buchanan told me this, and he was that.
Oh, very good. Go and find him then.
Distillery. We tell them, and then suddenly you get, no, that's wrong. And you go, oh, who's this? And it's guaranteed. I was in a master class in 2012, and I was told, really? Or somebody at the back's going, what yeast do you use? Like, right, how many yeasts do you know? Rhyme off that you know, and you forget the right one. I don't know any yeasts. Well, why are you asking the question then?
There is, I suppose, that there's a difference between kind of cake yeast and wet yeast that we're putting up. But apart from that, you don't. But again, it's why do you need to know that? It's
Unless you're
loving your brutal honesty here, Kenny. It's absolutely fantastic.
you've got more
And
gap.
it reminds me of a tour. I went to Glendronach one day to pick up some bottles, and there was a tour just starting with a guy, Siddhartha Paul, said from America. He's over visiting, and he's a good customer of ours, and very much a follower of Scotch. And a guy, Ali Milton, was with him. I don't know if you've met Ali in your travels.
Right.
And so I kind of tagged on. I wasn't drinking because I was driving, but I tagged on. And Karen was, Karen McWilliam, who used to be Glendronach, now Glenallachie.
Yeah.
And she was telling us about this group who were saying, and what's the moisture content of the soil that the water runs through? So Karen's a local farming lassie, so she knew exactly the answer. She told him straight off the bat, and he's like, "You're making that up." She said, "No," and tell you what, it was all my visitor centre staff. They know the answer to that question as well.
Honestly, some folk really need to get a better hobby. You know, that's just right. What will I do today? Let's go and torture some tour guides.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably unlucky that they got her.
It's always a nice thing when you can put them back in their box, though. You know,
Absolutely.
it's very, very seldom you do find these folk. But if you're at a festival with 10,000 people, you're going to have some numpties in amongst that lot somewhere, guaranteed.
Do you play like question bingo? I suppose. Yeah. Like, what questions are we going to get?
Yeah, because so many of them are copy paste, and what actually go around and ask the question at different stands, just to try and trip you up, try and see if he knew, but this one doesn't know, and this kind of. And we will sit at the night, and I think that's one of my favourite things of this industry is, although we're all competitors, at the end of the night we all sit down with each other to have a pint, you know, and we do the flat and say, well, how was your day? What? And that's one of the things that come up. What was your stupidest question of the day? And we have a right good laugh about it. And, you know, Stuart will tell you, that's the best bit of the job is sitting down with your whiskey family at the end of the shift and knowing, even though they're playing for another team, you're all still in it. And that's what I love this industry more than anything, is the close camaraderie, the fact that everybody's there to help each other out. No one says a bad word about anybody. There's one or two, don't get me wrong, we've had our...
There's got to be one or two somewhere.
Family, you know. But thankfully, we're no it. So, the black sheep, I'm quite happy. But yeah, we'll sit down and have a right good laugh at some of the mental questions. And sometimes the best questions are the ones that are genuinely honest, and they're only just starting out in their whiskey journey and they don't have a clue how it works. And they ask you the most bog standard, simple questions. And you go, I would love to sit for the next 10 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I'll talk you through the whole process really simply. And when we're finished, you'll know exactly what whiskey is and how it's made. And you'll see that light up and you're like, oh, thank you so much. Great. And then some Norbit turns up. And you're like, oh, a bit of you dies. But,
Is it a case that there's too much information available out there?
It's too
much what, sorry?
Misinformation as well, Mike.
That's a huge part of it. I call it the evolution of facts.
Yeah, that's 100% it. They are very much pseudo-experts who have listened to some guff spouted by somebody, and you think, I have no idea where you get this information from. I had an argument with a lad in a town in Ukraine called Rivne years ago, and I was working for Ian MacLeod's. I was doing a Glengoyne masterclass, and the guy says, I'd talk through the process, and this wee guy says, you forgot one thing. I'm like, did I? Oh well, pray tell, what did I forget? You forgot to mention that you water down the spirit before putting it in the cask. I'm like, no, we don't. I went, yes, you do. I went, no, we don't, mate. I've worked at Glengoyne. I've actually made this stuff, and I've physically put it in the casks. We don't. It goes in at 63.5% alcohol. No, you don't. You water it down. I thought, and you know this how? You know, and that's you get somebody like that, and all you want to do is go, throttle.
Is that because he's been to the distillery who does do that, and he just
very probably, you know, he'll have been somewhere that the new makes 68, 69% alcohol, and they will reduce it a wee bit before going to cask. Yeah, makes perfect sense. But if you don't have to, you don't do it. And you know, he was adamant that I had no idea what I was talking about. And I thought, mate, I can show you pictures of me filling the damn things. What do you want from me to prove that I know that I'm right here?
Yeah.
And he left in a huff. He just walked out in a huff. I thought, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to survive.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to I think we've done the festival rant. It's doing justice here. Any aspiring independent bottlers watching are just like, you know what? I'll just buy and drink the stuff.
If I wanted to be an independent bottler, what's the first thing I should do? I said, stare at a mirror and talk yourself out of it. For Christ's sake, so much easier not to do by other folks.
Mm-hmm. It's we find it. We grew quite a lot of independent range over lockdown. We find that's our market completely changed as a shop from when lockdown went online, and we found our independence kind of grew. So we invested quite a bit. Now that we've gone back into in-house a lot more, it almost feels like we've gone back to square one with independence, explaining face to face to people what an independent bottler is, what they do, and why it's different.
Yeah.
I say 70% of our customers aren't buying for themselves; they're buying as a gift. We're not a tourist location. We're not a whiskey location. We're kind of a small but thriving town, and people are buying from us for Father's Day, for Dad's birthday, for the wife, for whatever it is. If they know Granda likes Balvenie, they want Balvenie. If they know they like Glenrothes, and so for us to say, well, here's a Dram Mor Glenrothes, here's a Mossburn Craig Ellicky.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just take a proper Glenrothes. Well, it's that is very much like the blend scenario is. It's that education of what does an independent bottler do, and I think that there's a lot of work for Joe Public to understand whiskey. Guys like Tobias, Gary, Michael, who are watching, they get it. They're watching this because they're on whiskey, and they get it. Joe Public of the street, the lassie who wants to buy for her dad because her dad loves whiskey. They don't get that, and then it's we feel that we got over that hurdle when it went online, and now it's gone back to here's an independent bottler. So what would you think? What would you say to guys like us? What's the pitch? What's the difference that we can put in layman's terms?
For me, the one thing I would always look at what an independent bottler is we're the people who have got the opportunity to experiment a wee bit where the distilleries don't. The distilleries have to make sure that they've got their 10, 12, 15, 18, 21, whatever, their core range, and they've got to, repeat, and have it on the button all the time. They don't have the opportunity sometimes to be as, experimental as we can be. They don't have always the opportunity to just play with the stuff. We do. And, I think one thing that's really important with us is, and it might actually put folk off, but we don't want to copy the distillery style. We don't want to just replicate what they do. And, if it's someone say, for example, my grandpa loves Balvenie, Well, he'll never have had a Balvenie like this before. Because this is unique. It's a single cask. There's only 312 bottles of it in the world. And unlike anything the Balvenie have done, this has been done in a Calvados cask. So you're going to get an absolutely beautiful, sweet, rich, appley note coming through. Something like that, you know? And it's the very fact that we can experiment, that we can play, that we can really kind of pull out different hidden characters in that dram, which sometimes distilleries are just a little bit moribund by the fact that they've got to really concentrate on that core range and not diverse from it too greatly. Otherwise, people take a huff with them. You know, I think maybe if you look back to something like Bruichladdich, say for 15 years ago, it had 22,000 varieties of the same whiskey, and you're like, well, I don't know what this is anymore, because it was a bit all over the shop. So the distilleries have really got to concentrate on that core range. Every now and again, yeah, they can play where they get a distillery special. They can do one-offs, but we specialise in doing one-offs, and that's really the key. Is the fact that we can bring something new to the table, whereas the distilleries are pretty much shackled to what they've got to do. And I think for even talking to some of the distillers, that's what they love about indie bottlers, is the fact that they get the opportunity to see their own whiskey in different light.
Yeah.
And go, I loved what you did with this, I loved what you did with that. Fortunately, we've never had a, what the hell did you do with this? So far, it's all been pretty positive. And long may that continue. Yeah. But yeah, that's the way I would look at it, is that we get to have a little bit more fun with what we do.
Tobias has got a great point there. He likes to get, and this is me with Dram Mor. I like to give fans official Auchentoshan, then independent Auchentoshan. It's and then they learn. Nothing against Auchentoshan, but yeah, that's an example. And I'm the same with Dram Mor. I love Dram Mor. I'm not a fan of the supermarket legacy. Yeah, it's just.
Agree. I would agree 100%. And there are certain brands out there that are very attainable for us to get our hands on, and very flexible when it comes to playing with them. So you can do something that you go, oh my God, I surprised myself with this one. This is great. The one thing I would never want to say, right, I really like, say for example, let's copy it. No, let's not copy it. Let's do something. I know that Aberlour works really well at cask strength, but what else can we do with it? It's not just go down a route. It's been done. That's their job. That's acting. It's up to us to showcase it in a different light, and that's what's so fun about it.
Do you think it's possible? I'm on the back of what Mike was saying there. I'm thinking that those people that come into the shop with that kind of in mind are only ever looking at something that they know their granddad, their dad, whatever's his eyes are going to light up, and his eyes aren't going to light up if he sees this name he's never seen before. Even though the whiskey inside the bottle is going to be far superior, he's going to go, "What the fuck's this?" So do you think there's a kind of a part of the market that we're just never going to convince? I mean, it's a bit like, I suppose, if you're a keen mountain walker and you're just there's somebody just looking for a pair of shoes that are going to be outdoor for a relative, versus somebody who's a keen mountaineer who needs properly engineered stuff. There's no point in selling them a pair of Scarpa boots if they can buy a pair of whatever's from some kind of mountain clearance shop or something. Do you think sometimes we're almost going to waste our time with? I don't mean that in a kind of derogatory way, but sometimes we're just not going to convince them.
To a degree, Russell, yeah. And that goes for anything in the world. You're never going to get everyone on side. And, you made an incredibly good point where, there's a reason why big whiskey companies spend as much as they do on marketing, because people fall in love with the brand. And once you fall in love with that brand, you're absolutely right. Their eyes will light up when they see that brand. And if it ain't their brand, it ain't no good. And there is always going to be that situation where people do not want anything other than the bona fide 100% guaranteed distillery edition of whatever it is. And I get that. I understand that. But fortunately for us, I think the whiskey community we've got nowadays, way different from when I was younger. It's a much more diverse group. It's a group who are much more educated than they were when I was younger. And they're a group who really, in general, like to stretch the boundaries, like to taste the dram they've not tasted, not the one they have. You know, I'd always say, even to whiskey novices, I used to do a hell of a lot of training. I started failures, restaurateurs, that kind of thing. And I say, if you go into a bar and you see your favourite whiskey, well, there it is there. Always do this. There's my favourite whiskey. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I'll have that one.
Mm-hmm.
One, that one. Why would you drink the one that you know? Drink the one that you know.
Yeah, exactly.
There's people, back to my dad with his grouse. You know, nothing else counted. It had to be that, or it wasn't for him.
I would say that there is a flip side to that as well, and it's one that I use quite a lot to the guys who do tastings. Is, you know, the Glenfiddich is my example. The 12-year-old, nobody drinks it, or it's kind of almost become a victim of its own success because it's available everywhere. You can buy it anytime, to the point that nobody drinks it. You know, globally, yes, phenomenal in Scotland and within this kind of niche whiskey community that we've built. You know, you see, when's the last time you had a Glenfiddich 12-year-old? Can't remember. You know, maybe it was dad's at New Year because it's all they had. Next time in a bar, have a dram of it. Remind yourself how good a whiskey it is, because it's a great whiskey. I love it. But we're in the industry, and guys who go to whiskey bars all the time or whiskey clubs, we're spoiled for choice. That we forget what's on the doorstep. We forget probably one of the biggest drams that got us into that kind of whiskey lifestyle or love. Is I go back and have a dram of 12-year-old Glenfiddich, classic green bottle. Have a dram. Just remind yourself that it's a really good whiskey, and it's available for 30 quid a bottle, 35 quid a bottle.
There are so many like that, Mike. You know, classic Glenmorangie.
Yeah.
You know, how many folk would just go, it's just Glenmorangie.
Yeah,
When's the last time you tried it? I've never tried it. What do you mean you've never tried it?
Mm-hmm.
Try it. It's bloody wonderful. You know, there are so many of these which are now, but that brings us all the way back to that slightly, you know, that we're better than that attitude that we can bring to ourselves, you know, and it's not even something that we're encouraged to do. We just think we're better than we are sometimes. Yeah. And that slight snobbery comes into play. And you think, oh no, I'm not drinking that. It's not good enough for me. I can get that in a supermarket. Mm. Well, you buy all your bloody food in a supermarket. I don't see you no eat.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah.
People just so themselves sometimes, and you go, well, yeah. The reasons these drams, the Glenfiddichs of the world, the Glenmorangies of the world, are the size they are. It's because people all over the world absolutely bloody love this stuff.
Yeah.
It's consistently good. Yeah. And you bypass these things, and you shouldn't. You know, sometimes it's good to get yourself a reality and say, yeah, well, I've got to kind of rewind here and wind my neck in. I'm getting too big for my boots here.
Going back to a question from Ian, I think it was. So I know we've had this conversation on previous Dram Mor evenings and stuff, but where did the inspiration for the name of Dram Mor and the logo come from?
Right, that's an easy one. So, as I said earlier on, you know, all my family are from Lewis and Skye, and I would spend all my summers in Lewis when I was a kid. And when you go to Lewis, there is only so many names that bob around. There are a lot of Kenny MacDonalds. So I'd be... And I was never get my English name. It was always my Gaelic name, which was Cognac. So it was Cognac. Cognac for which Kenny? Cognac Luther. Kenny from the Clyde. Nah, try again. Cognac Mor. Big Kenny. Oh, Cognac Mor. Right, and that would be fine. So that's what I was known as, was Cognac Mor. So when I left meat inspection and I started this up, I thought, right, what am I going to, I've got to work under a name, I've got to be something. And I thought, well, Mor, that was always part of me. Dram Mor, it works pretty well. A big dram. Yeah, I'll go down that line. But with the spelling, the MOR in the Gaelic, that doesn't just mean physically large. It can be emotionally large as well. And that fit really nicely into the whiskey because it's something that can make your heart swell, you know, something that can really be something that's important to you. As far as the logo went, I was just scribbling, and it started off very much the kind of classic Ben Lomond shape, which is like that, and a flat top. It's classic old volcano type pyramid that we've got. And I drew it, and I thought, that looks quite good. I'm quite happy with that. And then, you know, when we started getting serious, we have got a really good pal who's a brilliant artist. And we went to her and said, look, what can you do with this? And she went, leave it with me. I'll do something with it. And she looked at Ben Lomond from all different angles. And if you look from the back of Ben Lomond, it pretty much looks like what we've got here. And she loved the way the light hit it and all this. So she then painted the logo that we've got. And that's been us ever since. And, you know, the one thing we didn't want to do was be massively extrovert on our bottle. We wanted to be relatively simple, tried to be as classy as we could be, tried to be sort of traditional, but with a wee slant on something else. Sorry? Oh, the boss said minimalistic and Scandinavian. I don't know where Scandinavia comes into Ben Lomond, to be honest, but never mind. Oh, all right. Thanks, boss. Oh, Vic, can you fill my water up, please? There you go. I've had to fill my water up. I'm really bevying the night. I'm going for it.
You surely are. Hiya.
Hello.
Okay.
How are
Is
you?
it the only one sober?
I'm the only one so well.
Yeah, almost. Do you want to take over, Victoria?
Aye, you can take over.
No.
Fear of the camera. So yeah, that's very much where the kind of name and the logo came from. We've had certain issues with the name, but thankfully those are now well and truly in the past.
Good.
And I was, fortunate enough to bump into the individual who sued us the other day when we went. Yeah, we joined the SWA a wee while back. We went to our first meeting at SWA, and this individual came up to shake my hand to introduce himself. And I thought, no hard feelings. I thought, yeah, it's easy for you to say. It wasn't your money you were spending, it was bloody our money we were spending. At the end of it, that cost us about 10 grand all in to get through that, but waste of time. Absolute waste of time and money.
Yeah.
But it's done now, it's gone. Dram Mor is here to stay, and that is all there is to it.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Rock on.
Yeah, there was a bit of concern there when that whole happened, but we don't want to dwell on that.
No, it's gone. It's finished. It's done. And now that name is 100% guaranteed, backed up, everybody's tickety boo. Yes, we can have it. That's the way it's going to stay. But there will be, when the blended malt comes out, there's going to be a new name for it. It'll be a different brand. And we'll also work, maybe not this year, it might be next year, on a blended rum as well.
Oh,
so little by little, as the rums really take off, we've had a lot of interest from, very new clients to us. I've always been in that whiskey circle. It's the whiskey fraternity that I know. I don't know the rum guys. So it's really nice to have them coming to us and saying nice things about the rums and asking about what's happening with them. So as it grows, I think if we can have our single casks and then we've got our blended malts on both sides, rum and whiskey, it puts us in good stead. And then once we've got that, we'll see, right, okay, what's next? Where do we go next?
Yeah, the rum market is really taken off. And we're seeing it slightly slower on kind of the single cask of the golden, the barrel aged rums. We're seeing a big influx of spice rums, kind of the entry level kind of almost sounds disservice, but that kind of sweet mixing cocktail, that kind of rums, and everyone starts somewhere, don't they? It's a game.
Yeah, absolutely fine. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of these rums are going to be for people to go home and play with. They're not drinking them neat, and they're making cocktails with them or whatever they're doing. And they're perfectly good for that. For me, I think there's a big crossover when it comes to rums and whiskies. I tend to find that most lovers are quite partial to rum, but maybe don't quite know how it works. They just know they like it. And most rum drinkers are really like whiskey, but they've got no idea how it works, but they just like it. Yeah. So we've got crossover. And that's, what we hope to do at some stage is when we tip the rums, we'll use the rum casks to finish whiskey in. And when we tip the whiskey casks to finish the rum in. And we get that thing going on, which works a treat. The first Foursquare we brought out, it had, luckily we were, it wasn't our brainchild, we bought it this way, but it had been 8 years in the Caribbean and then 5 years in a whiskey cask over here. So it had a beautiful fusion going on in it, and when you try that, you think, oh hell yes, this is something that we can play with. Mm-hmm. But I really hope it's one of the things that, whiskey side of things, which is always going to be the priority of the business. I really hope the guys who have tried our whiskies a wee bit and get out their comfort area and try from time to time. 100% is good. Wise is what you're in the single malts. It is easy stand and pour it into a glass. Just have a nice good dram. It's good. It's exciting.
Ian's asking if there's plans to have an independent bottlers festival. I'm aware that the North East Whisky Association, the guys in the North East of England, so Northumberland area, they're having. Is that? Are you guys going to that one? I can't remember if I saw your name on it or not. There's a few.
You can see the anger in Kenny's eyes. He wasn't invited to that.
Absolutely. So that's Carl Glenn. Carl Glenn. I'll send him your photograph, his photograph. Yeah,
please do. With the 27 years nightclub bouncer underneath it, that will also a threat that I want there. It's back to what we talked about earlier on. Much as it would be lovely to do these festivals, we just don't have the stuff. Yeah. I would love to be able to make sure that every festival I did, I was standing in front of Dram Mor. But until such time as we are bottling 30-odd casks every outturn, rather than 7 and 8 casks, there's not going to be the stock to do that.
Yeah.
We will get there eventually, but it's, Rome wasn't built in a day. We've just got to take time, build properly, and to build properly means build slowly. I don't want to get to a stage where I'm running and I've not made sure everything that's behind me is 100% solid concrete. Much rather little steps that are sustainable steps and are rock solid steps, rather than doing everything in a hurry and then, ending up with egg in my face. And again, it all boils down to quality as well, guys. If you're doing 30-odd casks, a really good example, I mean, no disrespect in any way, but if you go to SMWS, who are bottling something like 120 casks a month, is every single dram that you get from SMWS fantastic? Sometimes the quality is not quite there for me. Much as I love the place, good fun. It's, Gary and I have had many a nice drama in there, and a few evenings where we always remember going in and not remember coming out. Actually quite common for me, but when you're doing massive quantities, there is no physical way that you can 100% control the quality of what you're getting all the time. And one out for me, and we're in a state where we can sit down and categorically assure people that every one of these 30 casks is on the button, and I'm doing that 4 times, 5 times a year. Then I can start looking at doing festivals.
Yeah.
But that's not it's not a game that I can play at the moment, unfortunately, unless I'm there helping somebody else out.
Yeah. No, and as you said, it's a good place to be. It's not the place you want to be in, but it's a good place to be in as part of that building block. So
yeah. It definitely. And I wouldn't do it any other way. Although there's always an impatience. You always want to be slightly further ahead than you are, but realistically, we're already further ahead than where we thought we would be. We only started bottling at the end of 2019. And we're now in different countries. We've got, New Make Spirit down for us. We've got plans for our own warehouse here in Dumbarton. Everything is just ticking along way nicer than I thought we would be, especially when been through 2 years of a pandemic as well.
Yeah. If you knew what was ahead of you, would you have done? Would you have opened? Would you have started in 2019?
Probably not, if I'm being completely honest. But it would have been a mistake, because if nothing else, the pandemic, and it sounds terrible to say, but the pandemic's actually been quite good for us. Because we've been in a situation where, people, the vast majority of people have been furloughed from their work, so they've been sitting at home. They have had no restaurants, no bars, no cinemas, no holidays, no necessity to go and buy new clothes, no reason to put diesel in the car.
No holidays.
No, nothing. So the money's just been sitting there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was all right to have a drink on a school night, because we weren't getting up first thing in the morning to go to your work. You might have had a Zoom at 11:30, but so long as you put a shirt and a tie on, you could do it in pyjama bottoms. Yeah. So all of a sudden, let's have a drink. Aye, why not? It was a little bit, I found the beginning of it very similar to what it used to be like when we were kids and we get sent home because there'd been too much snow. Oh, we've got time off. Oh, this is magic. And so home and you weren't meant to be at home. You're like, all right, off bloody quickly. But we're having a drink because they were like, this is great. It's like a kid having chocolate on Christmas morning. And because of that money in the bank, they were buying slightly higher up than what they would normally. I'm sure you guys as well. Yeah. And the us is when you do go a wee bit up where you were, and the real world comes back, hellish difficult to come back down again.
Yeah.
Once that's your new norm. So we were very, very fortunate where, although we didn't have an on-trade, but we didn't have an on-trade market at the time anyway. All we had was off-trade, and it worked well for us. So had I known we were going straight into a pandemic, we'd have gone, no, let's just sit on this. But thankfully, we had no idea that it was not going to be a 6
that plunge, so you had to ride. And I suppose as well, what we've kind of seen from doing virtual tastings, and maybe not rustling myself directly because we were always working UK time, but you could have done a tasting to guys in Japan in the same time, in the same day, just America to UK. You could maybe do 3 tastings a day, going by their time zone, which physically would have been impossible.
Oh, you couldn't have done it. There is no way. The necessity for things like Zoom, which there was always the opportunity for things that were conference calls and stuff, but that has really solidified this as a working tool, which it wasn't really beforehand, that people were comfortable to use. And I'd be doing tastings in Singapore and the Netherlands in the same day, which was wonderful. I'd be having a meeting with people in America at 2:00 in the morning after having my whiskey club on the same day, and you're thinking, oh my God, I've got to speak to these Yanks and I'm half cut. Although, thankfully, I'm not a bloody word I say anyway, so it didn't make any difference. It's all right.
I think it was when we did the Blether. I think it was Ian for Teeth. I can't remember if it was a tasting or a Blether that we had, and he was off to do exactly the same Japan or something like that. And it was and all you need to do is change the link. It's like
Unless your ear is very well tuned, you might miss one or two things that he says because, by God, boy can speak at speed.
Oh, can't you just? He can just speak.
Oh, he can shift when he's talking.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been great. So yeah, Ian, I just popped up on the screen. Ian Bruce had a great company. He found out about yourself from the Good Spirits company in Glasgow, who I think only deal with independents.
They've got a few brands as well. They've got a few distillery stuff too. I mean, we were very fortunate. That's Victoria worked in there for years. She was there for about 6 years, I think, in Good Spirits. And it was a really nice place for meeting people, for getting to know folk within the whiskey world as well, both here and abroad, because pre-Brexit there was shipping a hell of a lot of stuff overseas as well. Obviously that's just no chance now, that's gone. And it was good for us because it did give us a really nice launch pad for when we did start. I was fortunate where so many people, distributors throughout mainland Europe knew me already because I'd been working for different folk that much. So that was great, and it made sense for us to start that way because folk knew me. And I'd done very, very little work in Scotland, to be honest with you. So there weren't that many folk here. Who the hell's Kenny MacDonald? We've no idea who this guy is. So it made sense to go to the markets that really knew us. But when it came to trying to, look at opening a small foothold in the UK market, well, we didn't have a lot of stock anyway, but Good Spirits were kind enough to say, bring it in here and see how it goes. Unfortunately, did get around working. Social media has been a godsend, much as I hate working it, but it's with a market budget of exactly that much. It is great. It's your free marketing. So, word got around, and as soon as it went to shelves, it was off the shelves. So, I've spoken to you before about up to yourselves, and we've just never had anything to give you, which has been brutal. I will make sure that when this new outturn comes, I'll bang some samples up to you. Don't sit on them for a month and then tell me you want something, though.
Yeah. I think
get into them quicker.
Through one of the wholesale Hoffmans.
I sent you that 3 months ago. That is ancient history. I'd none left 3 days after it. Never means.
Yeah.
But I really do. I'd said earlier on to you guys. I do want to be up there. I do want to be in with you lads, and we will make that happen. Come up, and so long as you guys are happy with them, great. Let's do it. And that's going to be our job over the next couple of years, is really strengthening what we've got in the local market. Because we do get a lot of criticism sometimes from people who do love the brand, who do love what we do, and they feel maybe a wee bit let down that everything goes abroad and we're not looking after our home fans as much as we should do. So that's very much been taken on board, and it's something that we will rectify as soon as we can.
Is it something that you might look at doing UK exclusives or German exclusives and that? Because obviously demand is there now to maybe branch into that.
That's exactly what we want, Mike. And one of these ones where what you would then do, because there's always somebody that wants something from an exclusive. So you would say, okay, so that cask is part of 7 casks that are going to be a Bellalux exclusive, but I'm going to take cases off it and give it a case, a mixed case of each one to a few retailers that we know. That way you can say, well, we've actually got something that you can't get in the UK, really. This is a Bellalux exclusive. This is an Australian exclusive. This is Canadian exclusive. And the same will work for the UK exclusive, where we will give, because I know that Jurgen Vromans, who looks after us in Belgium, who's done wonders for us, he's also got a lot of people who will collect Dram Mor stuff bizarrely. And they will want one. I've even had to send a label to somebody because he couldn't buy the bottle, so the least they could do is have the label. So I sent him the label. That's so flattering when folk have gone that deep into what you're doing. But it'd be nice to make sure that these guys do get the opportunity to get a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the UK exclusive is very much on the plans, and hopefully, well, we'll see what happens come the end of the year. We should have had something for the summer that would have been UK exclusive, but we got a whole load of casks that we finished a whole load of stuff in, and they gave us nothing. And when we got our samples, they were just exactly the way when they were put in the first place. And it was frustrating. It's a waste of money for the casks. It's a waste of time. The spirit's no worse off for its time in these casks, because basically the casks have not been active at all. They've just stored it. So we can always rework them. But it's the one thing that I'm very, very wary of is if a re-rack doesn't work, don't just chase it. Don't just, all right, we'll do something else with it, or we'll do something, because you're just a problem.
Is there a legal restriction on how many casks you could finish in?
Not that I've ever seen.
What? Because I've heard, I'm trying to think who it was that we had. Oh.
No, Russell's vanished off the face of the earth there.
Yeah, we've reached the 1 hour 50. It must be toilet time. He's at that age now. He can't hold it for 2 hours.
I'm under the table.
I was trying to think who it was, and they bottled as an ex-wine cask, but they bought it off another independent who had finished that wine cask, so that there had been whiskey and scotch in it between the wine and them getting it, but it's still an ex-wine cask.
I've certainly never seen anything that indicates that you're limited to the amount of times that you can rework a spirit.
Yeah.
One thing I would say is it's a fool's game, because all you're going to do is screw up that spirit. That every time, even if you look at, right, there's a really good example. If you look at something like Auchentoshan 3-wood, now for the vast majority of anything that's going to be claiming that it's a 3-wood or a double wood, what they will do is they'll take distillate that's been matured in one form of cask, distillate that's been matured in another form of cask, and vat together. With the Auchentoshan 3-wood, that's transferred. Every drop of that starts an American bourbon. Every drop and then put into Oloroso, and then every drop's drained from the Oloroso and put into Pedro Jimenez. So it's been through, every drop of that's already been through 3 different maturations.
Yeah.
There's nothing to stop you doing that. But from my perspective, fortunately, all we were doing with a lot of these spirits was putting a light bourbon foundation on them before going on to do something else anyway.
Mm-hmm.
As it was, the bourbon casks didn't give us hee-haw. They were really disappointing. But there's no damage done. We'll just rework them.
Yeah.
I got to do something like, say, a wine finish. I've done this before. There's been a wine finish that we had a look at and we thought, yeah, do you know what? It's all right. But all right's not good enough. And we looked at it and we thought, is there anything else that we can do with that? And I thought, no, all we're going to do is start chasing good. We're just going to make a pig's ear of this if we keep messing about with it. Just sell the cask on. So it's no good for us. And that's what we did. We actually found somebody who really liked it and wanted to bottle it. Fine, away you go. It's yours.
And I suppose, so is it quite easy? Is it quite a healthy market that resale? You've bought a cask from a broker, I presume, or somebody, and you're right. Let's get it back in the market.
In all honesty, the market is rabid, Mike.
Yeah.
It's rabid. When you want to sell a cask, it's like throwing fresh meat to piranha. It's insane. And it used to be a very healthy market. It used to be a really good market until just over 2 years ago. Frank Knight, one of the biggest investment houses in the world, came out with a report saying Scotch whisky is now the most investable commodity in the world. And overnight, charlatan cask companies popped out of the woodwork, selling the same cask to 4 people, selling casks that didn't exist, selling casks for 36 grand that were actually worth 6 grand. Yeah. And it really gave that whole side of the industry incredibly bad name, and it still has. At the moment, the good brokers that we've been working with for years, I look at some of the prices this year compared to last year, and I don't know whether to laugh or cry, because some of them have, doubled in a year.
Yeah.
And you think,
it used to be. I mean, it still is. I mean, let's not. We used to emphasize that independent bottlers was a great price point for realizing single cask or unique whiskies. They still are, but almost at a lesser degree, because you guys have to take the brunt of the market of the cask. The price of the cask now.
Yeah.
It's not that you can absorb double the value.
No chance.
It's insane to expect that. Unfortunately, that kind of hook is gone, unless you're somebody like Gordon MacPhail who can stagger their price market, because they've been buying cask for 200 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Well established. Berry Brothers, these kind of guys have that. And it's going to take a long time for guys like yourself to do that. But
hell yeah.
You reach me, and we have a lot of people come and say, I want to invest in a cask. What advice can you give me? And it's almost like you say when you're starting an indie bottling, you look yourself in the mirror and say, do I really want to do this?
It's incredible. Don't get me. That there's no better place to put money as far as seeing your money appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I've helped people who have wanted to do that. To one of my friends wanted to do it to help clear his mortgage faster, and we did that, no problem, and he cleared his mortgage a good 9 months before it was due to clear, which meant he could leave the job that he hated and go and do something that he wanted to do but paid less. So there is no financially safer or financially lucrative better place to put your money than into a cask of whiskey. But you need to make sure that when you're doing it with 100% someone who knows what they're doing, that are fully registered with HMRC, that have got their wow, that have got all these things,
Yeah. What the advice that we give to people is never buy from somebody who's trying to sell you a cask.
That's actually pretty good advice. Yeah, that's sound. We tend to get people who, they will approach us, and I'll do my due diligence on them, just like I would hope they do their due diligence on me, because it would give us an incredibly bad reputation in the industry if we were selling casks of anyone's spirit and it was going into the wrong hands, that then turns out on the open market in China or the Middle East or somewhere like that, and that's not good. We've had it in the past where, we've had people chase us saying, there's this cask being sold, is that one of yours? No. Are you sure that's not one of yours? Yeah, I can give you the numbers of all the casks that we've bought from you. All right, okay, no, you're right, it's not one of yours. I'm really sorry about that. No problem. Because these distilleries will chase you down and go, well, why the hell are you doing that? I sold that for you to bottle. Why is that in the market? Yeah. There will be, like if a cask doesn't work and I want to sell it on, okay, I'll sell it on, but I'll sell it on to someone I know categorically who's going to bottle that.
Yeah.
So it's not just going to pop up on some dodgy marketplace somewhere,
Yeah.
I was getting a bit of obviously I dipped out a couple of times there, but a bit of a gist with the whole investment in cask buying and all these kind of things. you think it's going to change? I mean, I was reading a thing about the market, and we have these booms and crashes all the time in the whiskey industry.
Yeah.
It's historical. Do you see things maybe changing as time goes forward, as we're kind of coming out of lockdown, as people are going back to spending money on holidays, clothes, and all these other things? Do you think it'll start slowing down a bit?
I genuinely don't think so, Russell, because it's not just a local thing. This is a global explosion in whiskey fascination. My gut feeling, if you look at the two previous golden ages of whiskey, they've come to a shuddering halt, one through the Patterson crisis, and secondly through massive overproduction, and really having no foresight into forward planning and what they were actually going to do with this. It was just make as much as you can. This time round, as we're now in the third golden era of whiskey, we've now become a very professional body as an industry. People are not just going haywire and making as much as they can. That people are being very, very controlled over what's being produced, how much is being produced, what the price point is, all these kind of things. So my gut feeling is that for the first time, really since its inception as an industry, we're pretty much in control of how this is going, and we've got good heads at the helm who are steering this, making sure that if troubled waters are ahead, we'll get through those troubled waters.
I suppose the marketing is key to that as well. We have that brand, we have global awareness. Maybe it's a cynic in me, but looking at this, we had the blends, and then we had the single malts, and then age statement, and then we traversed that through non-age statements.
Yeah.
And it might be that the next big thing is blends, but it's still all,
It's still it's still part of the family, Mike, and it's. I think, whiskey, if you look at it from even 10 years ago, was still a drink that was pitched very much at middle-aged men with money in their pocket. That's your whiskey client. I'll go to whiskey festivals, particularly in the continent, where I would say that the change in the demographic of who's attending these festivals is phenomenal. You have got so many 20-somethings in that hall who would never have been seen dead drinking whiskey, in generations past. And so many young women who are now engaging in whiskey as well, which, why the hell we decided whiskey was something for half the population and not all of it makes no sense.
There's another interesting change as well, is that people are aware of all the individual distilleries. Whereas if you think about Compton Mackenzie's Whiskey Galore, it was all these kind of bizarre Highland cream and West Coast spirit, all these bizarre
Queen of the Glen and
all that kind of stuff.
Donkey and all that. You're like, what? Who? Where?
People would have been familiar with all those kind of names of the blends. They wouldn't have actually had any idea about the factory that came from. Whereas nowadays, they not only do they know the blend names, but they also know the factory names. So everybody knows about the whole industry now. Whereas before, it was a bottle.
That's where we come back to, we mentioned it earlier on, we've got a much more educated client than we ever had. And I think, especially with the younger clientele that we've got now and the younger whiskey fans, they've grown up in a world. It's important to know the background of your food. It's important to know the background of your drink. Is this sustainable? Is this organic? Is this XYZ? Yeah. They want these things. Yeah. Even that
on Google at a festival, you could be telling them one thing, and you can see them. They'll be on their phone. And they're like, actually, that's not right.
I'll just check. I'm not being bullshit.
They'll do two things. They'll do two things. They might do that, but what they're actually doing is they'll actually stay with you if they've double checked it on the internet that actually he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
I'll kind of go, oh, okay, I like this guy.
All right, this guy's okay. Yeah, I'll go back to my shop. He's all right.
But it's more important now than ever for a brand ambassador, one, to be truthful and not full of marketing bullshit, and two, to know their stuff.
But I've definitely been there in a tasting where I've actually said something and the person's gone, it says that here as well. I'm like,
No, I think, it's one of the things that I've from day one in this game. Wing it. If you're not 100% sure, tell them you're not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Look, I've got a really good idea that I think I know the right answer to that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that out for you. Can you get contact details? I'll get back. And make sure you do get back to them. Go, good guy, he's all right. But never caught out by hanging yourself out to dry, saying something that might be sort of all right. Nah. Because now you could have done that years gone by, because no one had a bleeding clue how anything worked.
No,
so long as
they're all looking at the internet while you're telling them stuff. So
everyone can be an instant expert now, because they've got that Wikipedia page on the distillery that says, well, actually, I think you'll find it makes 5,200,000 a year. So all the facts and figures are there for them. So you can't afford to wing it. You can't afford to go, well, it might sound sort of all right. Which is good. It's good because we're not selling a lie. We're not stringing on. We are. The most important thing for me is we're selling whiskey from the heart. We genuinely believe the product that we sell. This isn't just a job. This is a lifestyle. This is that we're all 100% passionate, bought into, and we nothing better than to promote the passion that we've got for this stuff, and that transcends by miles. But to do that, you've got your stuff, and if you don't know go away and read, watch where people have got the opportunity to ask questions and chew the fat and see where they want to go with it. But the beauty with this is no one's ever an expert, because there's always more to learn.
Yeah. And what we knew 10 years ago is fact might not be fact today. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it, because it changes. Everything changes.
Yeah.
And some of the improvements and the innovation in the industry that have made distilling as fine an art as it is.
I feel he was just at his most poignant moment there as well.
I think he was. Oh, here we go.
We're back. You're going to have to say that again, Kenny, because you're.
I'm back.
You're back.
I could almost hear the pipes blowing in the background, and so the salters were flying. It was like
next door neighbour in Erd and Lewis phoning me to say, when's the pub going to be open tomorrow? Give my mail back later on. It's all good. But now what? Oh, it's a voicemail. Go away, mate. I'll talk to you in a minute. It's. I think we're very, very fortunate. We're lucky to be where we are at the time that we are. Best time whiskey's ever had, because there's no bullshit around it. I think it's a very honest industry in general. What you see is what you get. There's always wee bits and bobs that you go, what? Case piece. But in general, it's a very, very honest industry. I think that we can promote and sell this with a very with real surety that we're giving somebody something that is as good as you're going to get. And I think that in turn makes you proud to do what you do, and happy to do what you do, because I know that if I've delivered a good dram to somebody, I know they're going to enjoy that. I know that's going to be special. And if you can then put on a good show whilst you're doing it, you're entertaining them as well, and they're going to remember that, and that's staying in there. And that's what whiskey should be. It's not just an experience. And that's what it's just so good. And we're very fortunate, men and women, to be around this period of where whiskey is.
As we said right at the start of the night, there's so many indie bottlers, there's so many distillers, so many expressions that you can't just be different by having a fancy label or a different cask. You need that character, you need that trust, and you need something that's going to make people walk away from a festival saying, "I remember Kenny. He put on a show. His whiskey was great, and that's what sticks in the mind."
The catalyst. That's what we need.
Catalyst,
you should get that on the back of your shirt.
The bleeder of shite.
I'm going to get that right across my galley shirt. The catalyst.
Absolutely. Aye.
I'll get one of these kind of boxing robes and I'll come in, master.
Absolutely.
do you have? You might have. I feel like I'm playing catch up with the whole Dram Mor experience. In terms of non-Scottish whiskey, have you done anything out with Scottish?
Not yet, but watch this space. We had a remarkably good tasting when we were in Israel over in Milk and Honey, where Tal and Tomer, I think, were pretty sure that I wasn't going to walk out of that place, which was good because I had a whiskey tasting to do straight after it. I wouldn't say it was my finest hour, if I'm being completely honest, as they got us to try 18 casks when we were in there. But I kid you not, some of the whiskey that came out of those casks was sublime. So we will definitely be looking to do a wee bit with them. We were halfway down talking with Penderyn, and it kind of went off the Skype when the pandemic hit. We're looking at I've got pretty good pals in Ireland. Zudam in the Netherlands we're talking with as well. So it would be really nice to get to the stage where we can actually do a full international release of different international whiskies. I'm certainly, it's one of the things I think both Victoria and I, from the very beginning, said we're going to be as open-minded here as we can possibly be. And just because I'm phenomenally proud of my country. I am 100% Scottish. There's no a British bit of me other than my passport. And who knows, next October that might change. We will see. But we're not there yet. But yeah, it's one of the things that I'm also very aware that there are another 27 odd countries that make single malt whiskey, and some of them make it pretty damn well. Yeah. Some of them don't, however. So there's going to be a good few countries that I will circumnavigate. But yeah, if interesting things pop up, and particularly from Ireland, I've found a hell of a lot of interesting spirit coming out of Ireland at the moment. I need to do a wee bit more reading because the Irish distillation process, what with pot stills and double pot stills and single grains and grain pot stilled, and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? A hell of a lot going on. I get the general principles, but the minute they start talking about it, my head melts. So I've got to have a right good look into the ins and outs, but some of the spirit is great. So yeah, we're planning on nipping over the water to have a word with a couple of the guys over there and see what we can get from them. So yeah, there will definitely be international releases coming soon, folks.
Look forward to that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
in particular, I have just been blown away by the quality of it. It's breathtakingly good.
And that's what you're looking for, isn't it? You're now at the stage where people trust the Dram Mor name. They trust you to put quality spirit, no matter where it comes from.
Yeah, that's the key. That's why at the very beginning, Mike, we set the bar really high for ourselves, and no matter what happens, we've got to keep the bar really high. Because people have been kind enough, generous enough to place their trust in us, and if they're going to do that, then we've got a duty to them to make sure that we maintain that trust and that they've not been foolish in doing that they've been right to do it. So if that Dram Mor label's there, it might not be to everybody's taste, it might not be their style of whiskey, but I can promise you it's bloody good quality. I'm not ever going to be able to please all the people all the time. You just physically can't do that.
Yeah.
But what I just promise that although it might not be for you, you'll never complain that the quality is very good.
I always have an aim when we do our own whiskey tastings. If I can please, if 80% of the people like 80% of the whiskey, then I think that's a good target.
You're on a winner. Yeah. And so far, it's one of these ones where, because there is a limited amount of whiskey there for us, just because one person doesn't like it, his next door neighbour, and it's way into the right hands. We've been fortunate enough where our distributors have sold it very well. They've explained it very well to people. So when people are buying these drams, they're not just going willy-nilly. One. I dare say it happens. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it never happens. But in general, they're being very well guided to the correct for them. And then when they do go home and open it, I've said so many nice comments coming in through, social media and stuff, just saying, "Oh, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much." Yeah. And that, while it makes everything you do worthwhile, it just that smile on your face, and you go, "Yes, I've got it." It's good. It's good. I would never change it, lads. That's for sure.
Perfect.
Good stuff. Well, I'll be honest. We could sit here for another 2 hours.
I sent Mike a message after the first hour and said that's been the quickest first hour. We have these chats on a regular basis, and sometimes when you're going through the first half hour, it feels a little bit sluggish sometimes, and then you get going, and it's suddenly. But the first hour just went boom.
That's basically
just incredible, Kenny.
It's the one thing that's no difficult is getting me talking. Is getting me to shut up. However, that said, it is getting to the time because I've got to phone this old bugger back in the village.
And you've got to get early tomorrow as well. Yeah.
And I've got to be in Ullapool at 9:30. So it's 4:45 in the morning. Shot heading out. At least I'll have the roads to myself, providing I manage to circumnavigate the deer. I'll be all right. But yeah, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, lads. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Can you just hold on 2 seconds after we go off live, Kenny? We'll just say a quick cheerio from us as well. But
for the guys watching, thank you very much for sticking around.
Thank you. We've had two or three attempts to get you on before, and we've finally made it. So
we got there in the end, mate. We got there, and now you're wishing, Christ, why did we bother that?
Absolutely not. No.
Because I feel there's so much more to come, and when we've got your bottles on the shelf as well, that's going to be
definitely. But we'll make a point of making that happen, guys.
Definitely keen.
So next week, I think I'm on my own. I think you're away next Thursday, Mike. Or are you here?
I am. I've been invited by one of our local rums, Twice Buried, are up for one of the local business elevator awards, and they've invited us. Invited myself and Tony to go over and be their guests at the award dinner. So I'm going to be there.
So you're away. So I'm going to be on my own next Thursday. So we're back to Thursday next week, guys.
Thursday next week.
The 23rd, with Oliver Chilton or Ollie Chilton from Elixir. I bumped into Ollie as a guest of some other people's stag do. He was there. One of these tastings that you do when you suddenly think, "Oh shit." There's some.
So does anyone have any experience?
There's somebody here who knows what they're doing.
Kind of have it.
Always going to come on, and so please join me and Ollie next week, guys. Absolutely wonderful guy. Great business as well. So, and we'll hear a bit more about their new distillery on Isla as well, which is
yeah. If I'm free, I might just tag along on that one. That would be nice.
Please do. Be good to have you there and get your questions in, Kenny, if you're going to do that. Fantastic. So yeah, thank you very much again, guys. We'll see you next week, and you'll see Mike probably the week after, perhaps.
Definitely, yeah, I'll be back. Just unfortunate Not unfortunately, because it's great. We've been asked to support these guys.
You can't be everywhere all the time, Mike. That's
Exactly. Yeah, if you see me watching, I'll just have the phone on. If they don't win the award, I'll be straight on.
I'm looking forward to chat again. But yeah, so thanks very much again, guys. Thanks for joining us. Thank you very much, Kenny.
My pleasure, lads. My pleasure.
Okay, guys. See you next week. And don't be strangers. You come and ask any questions if you're watching. Kind of after the live broadcast.
Yeah,
pop your questions in the chat. We'll do our best to. If we can't answer it, we'll be straight on to Kenny to ask him, and we'll try and get back to you. So yeah,
prayer to get the right answer.
Absolutely.
He'll Google it if he doesn't know it.
Cheers, guys.
See you next week, if not before. Bye.